Hello, everybody. First, I want to introduce the Director of Fun, Henry Gillibrand. Henry just won this sloth. He's named his sloth. What's the name?
Blueberry.
Yes, and this is the driver of the RV, Jonathan Gillibrand.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
They've made my trip to Iowa amazing. We've done an RV tour over the last few days. We have a couple more days to go. It's been the best part of our summer, and we've loved it. And Henry loves your state fair. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, come on.
Henry won that, no joke, with the little Frisbee thing. I don't know. Anyway, it is such a pleasure to be here. I can't tell you how exciting it is. I got my start in politics in a community not unlike this. My grandmother, she was a woman who loved politics. She started working at age 18 as a secretary in our state legislature. 75 years ago, she looked around. All the legislators were men. All the support staff were women. So she wanted to have a voice. She didn't know how. She knew her voice was important. But what she figured out is the voice of all the women was even more important. So she learned to work on campaigns. She learned to organize. She taught women how to go door to door, how to stuff envelopes, how to make phone calls. And my first memory on a campaign was when I was Henry's age. And I walked into this campaign headquarters, and it was a hot August day. And the women were wearing dresses, not unlike mine, sleeveless cotton dresses to keep cool. And they were stuffing their envelopes. And as they're stuffing, I'm thinking, wow, I'm mesmerized by their arms, their very jiggly arms. And I'm saying to myself, I want to be just like those ladies someday. Sure enough, jiggly arms for everybody. So I loved my grandmother, and I loved how much she loved politics, because it was an extension of her values. It was an extension of who she was, what she wanted to accomplish, and who she wanted to help in her communities. So I followed in her footsteps. But the one lesson my grandmother taught me was I should never give up, that there was nothing I couldn't do, and there was no such thing as impossible. I took those words to heart. And if you need to know anything about me, anything at all, you tell me something's impossible, I get it done. And I've done it my whole life. When I first ran for Congress in 2006, I was told I could not win my upstate New York congressional district. I went to my pollster and I said, Jeffrey, I really want to run in New York 20. Can I win? And he said, no. I said, really? I can't win? He said, no. I said, but I've been helping campaigns for a decade. I know how to raise money. I bet I could raise $2 million and get my message out. Can I win then? He said, no, Kirsten, it's 2-1 Republican. You can't win. I said, yeah, but what happens if I run the perfect campaign? You can't tell me that if I have enough money and run a perfect campaign that I can't win. He said, Kirsten, there are more cows than Democrats in your district. You just can't win. Well, I'm frustrated by this point. And I said, you know, Jeffrey, what happens if this guy gets indicted? I could clearly beat him then, right? Well, he says, it depends what he gets indicted for. So it's a red district. The only person who thought I could win was my mother. Now that tells you a lot about my mother. My mother was raised by her mother, my grandmother, to be strong, to be brave. My mom was one of only 3 women in her law school class. When she came to be an Albany lawyer, a lot of people in the gay rights community didn't have lawyers. So they went to her. So if they wanted to buy a house, she helped them. If they wanted to have a will for each other, she helped them. My mother was also tough. By the time she was my age, she was a 2nd-degree black belt in karate. My mom didn't just cook the Thanksgiving turkey, she shot the Thanksgiving turkey. So I grew up in a family of strong women, and so when I ran for this congressional district, nobody thought I could do it. But I did. The one mistake my opponent made is he never took me seriously, not once. He demeaned me, he dismissed me, he called me names, just like Trump will do. In fact, one time he said to me, you're just another pretty face. I said, thank you. Then I talked about all the ways I was different from him. I talked about why we needed to get our troops out of Iraq. I talked about why healthcare should be a right and not a privilege. I ran on Medicare for all in a 2-1 Republican district and won. I ran for re-election. My opponent again didn't take me seriously. That particular campaign, I was out to here pregnant with Henry, who you just met. I had a toddler at home, Theo, who's 15, is still at camp, canoeing in the wilderness. And I'm walking around the district like this, And he runs all negative ads, really mean negative ads, so mean I had to turn the TV off because I had a toddler at home. I didn't want him to see his mother's face in red with flames coming out of my head and a very dark voice saying, "She's not who you think she is." So we learned something in politics that day. You cannot win a congressional campaign against a young mother with an infant and a toddler with negative ads. No one believes you. I beat him by 24 points. So it was not impossible. When I got to the US Senate, I met with a soldier, a man who said, "I joined the military because I believe in the honesty, the integrity, the character of people who serve in the military, and I wanted to be one of them." He said, "But not for me, because I am forced every day to lie about who I am and who I love, and I cannot bear it." So I said, "Well, I will help you repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I will lift up your voice." I went to the advocates. And I said, "We must repeal this now." And they said, "Oh, Kirsten, that's impossible. You can't do it. The military won't let it happen. The best we can hope for is that President Obama doesn't enforce it." And I said, "No, that's not good enough. We actually have to repeal this corrosive, horrible, discriminatory policy." And I got to work. I went first to my Democrats and I said, "We got to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell." I'm sorry to say, some Democrats said, "Kirsten, why are you doing this now? It's not convenient." When are civil rights ever convenient? I got all the Democrats on the bill. I found the Republican allies I needed. I asked Susan Collins. We worked together. We got the 7 Republicans. We stood up to the Pentagon, and we repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It was not impossible. So then I'm asked, as a freshman senator, "You have to help, Kirsten. We need to pass the 9/11 health bill." Well, I was told it was impossible because it was dead on arrival. It had sat in the House of Representatives for 7 years, 20 hearings, no progress. In the Senate, it hadn't even been introduced, not even written, not even a hearing. And so I got to work. So I wrote the bill. I introduced it. I got a hearing. I found a Republican. He co-sponsored it with me. I went to my friends in the Senate, my women friends, and said, "How do I pass a big bill like this?" And they said, "Kirsten, we'll help you. We'll tell you how to pay for it in a way the Republicans can't say no." They helped me behind the scenes. We asked the first responders to come to Washington over and over and over again. Within a year and a half, everybody was talking about it. We had MSNBC, of course. We had CNN, of course. We had Jon Stewart, 2 whole episodes on the 9/11 health bill. But we didn't have Fox News. So I went into the lion's den and I met with Roger Ailes. And I said, "Roger, you say you're the party of first responders. Where are you on this bill?" I convinced him. We learned a second thing that's true in politics. When you have Jon Stewart on one side and Fox News on the other side, you are going to win. It passed unanimously. Not impossible. I had to bring it back up 5 years later because the money was running out and it wasn't permanent. We passed it again. And just 2 weeks ago, we made it permanent for our first responders for compensation and health care forever. Not impossible. So now, the number 1 question on any Democrat's mind is, can you beat Trump? The number 2 question on any Democrat's mind is, can you beat Trump? Number 3, can you beat Trump? The answer is yes, I can beat Trump. It is not impossible. I'll tell you how. Because I always represent everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live, or who you love. I have your back. I will represent your family as if you were my own. It's who I am. It's what I've done. My 3 races in New York, 2010, 12, 18, highest vote percentage in the history of the state. Higher than Obama, higher than Hillary, higher than Trump. I just won back a bunch of counties that Trump had won in the last election. So I win in the red places, the purple places, and the blue places, and I bring people together. I actually get stuff done. I passed 18 bills in the last Congress that President Trump signed into law. He does not know he signed my bills into law, but he did. So I get things done. And I gotta tell you, President Trump is dividing us. Hate crimes have gone up under him. Racism, homophobia, misogyny, anti-Semitism. And he's emboldened white supremacists. He's emboldened racists. He's emboldened hate groups. He finds moral equivalencies where there are none. He said there were good people on both sides after Charlottesville. He laughed when an organizer in Florida, when he's doing a big rally and they say, what do we do with immigrants? And someone yells out, shoot them. He laughed. He's giving permission for hate to flow. And I decided to run for president because we need someone who will remind this country we are so much stronger when we care about one another. We are such a better country when we believe in the golden rule. When we treat others the way we want to be treated, when we love one another, when we care about the least among us. That is who I am. I am a person of deep faith. I believe in Matthew 25. I believe in Matthew 5 that we are the light of the world, that we are meant to be on a hill so all can see. That is the beacon of light and hope of America. We are meant to be the light of the world. I also know what to do. The very first thing I'm going to do when I'm elected president, I'm going to Clorox the Oval Office. The second thing I'm going to do is restore our moral leadership on the world stage. Sign on to the Global Climate Accords. Lead the world in a worldwide conversation about how we attack global climate change. It's an idea that's big, but we can do it. When John F. Kennedy said, I want to put a man on the moon in this decade, not because it's easy, but because it's hard, because it's a measure of our inventiveness, our effectiveness, who we are as a country. He knew that a space race with Russia would galvanize the country to want to be an astronaut, to want to be an engineer, and it worked. We can do the same thing with green energy. Our Iowa farmers can be part of biofuels, can be part of how we do carbon sequestration. Rural America can lead the way in how we tackle global climate change. Our scientists, our engineers are the brightest in the world. They can invent our solutions out of this problem. Put a price on carbon. Make sure you're rewarding entrepreneurship and innovation. We can do this. I will do this as your president. Is it impossible? Not impossible. Pass healthcare as a right and not a privilege. Take on the drug companies and the insurance companies. Not impossible. I will deliver healthcare as a right. And I just spent this morning with people who have lost loved ones because of gun violence, lost their loved ones, suffered through it, survived gun violence. And it's crippling. One of my best friends in the House was Gabby Giffords. I watched what happened to her when she just went to a Congress on her corner to serve the public, and a little girl who wanted to see her congresswoman showed up and was shot and killed. Gabby survived. How many others don't? So I will take on the NRA. I will get money out of politics. I will have publicly funded election because it's not impossible. Thank you so much. Front row.
I know you care about Iowans with disabilities. Bill Stump, Kyle Stump. And we're worried about the virtual caucuses because they're not beta testing them to make sure people with disabilities can use them. Can you push the Democratic Party to do that?
Thank you so much for your question. And I've been meeting with people within your community here in Iowa. One of my favorite young men that I met with is Kyle. He's incredible. He came to the debate to watch me. We had a great time. But the truth is we need to care about everyone in our communities. We need to make sure that the disability community can get the best education in the world. It's why I will fully fund special ed, not the paltry 18%, but I'm going to fund it at 50%. I will never have a an education secretary like Betsy DeVos, ever. And we will make sure that as our members of our disability community age, they have job training. They can age in place. They can have homes where they can look after themselves, have the home health aides they may need, have support for the jobs they have. Kyle goes to work. He works at a local pizza parlor, and everyone who works with him loves him. Loves him. Kyle is a 29-year-old man with Down syndrome, and he's an inspiration. So I will fight for our disability community, and I will make sure that for these Iowa caucuses that everyone is included and no one is discriminated against. I will use my voice to get that done.
Hi. First of all, Senator, I want to thank you for your commitment to addressing the overdose crisis in this country, especially with your support for the CARE Act, which is giving funding to communities like those in Iowa to address the overdose crisis. There's a new bill in Congress right now called the MAT Act, the Mainstreaming Addiction Treatment Act, and what that would do is remove some of the restrictions around providing harm reduction services like buprenorphine or medications that can be prescribed to treat the overdose crisis through harm reduction techniques versus criminalization. It's a bipartisan bill. Is that something that you would support?
Yes, I will look. She asked about a bill specifically for how we treat addiction in this country. And this sounds like a very broad-based bipartisan bill in the House of Representatives. I will look to see if it has a lead in the Senate. If it doesn't, oh, then I'm definitely in. She is so knowledgeable about the issues of addiction. Obviously, you know, New Hampshire is still reeling from a crisis. And so I think to deal with addiction in this country, we need funding, specifically for treatment and prevention. We need to take on the drug companies. When a drug company like Purdue Pharmaceutical has documents that showed they made their opioids more addictive so that they could addict more patients, you should have criminal liability. They should be investigated and prosecuted.
I'm wondering what you will do to secure reproductive rights in states. Iowa's been trying, but in the states that are trying to eliminate.
So I believe that reproductive rights in this country are civil rights, they're human rights, and they're constitutional rights. And they needed to be treated that way. The Supreme Court ruled 40 years ago that women have a right to basic constitutional right to privacy. And they made that right and secured that right for 40 years. Under President Trump, he has demonized women's reproductive freedom. He said he would only name justices that don't see women's reproductive freedom as human rights. Both Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are against women's reproductive freedom. He's emboldened 30 legislatures around the country to actually overturn Roe v. Wade because he doesn't want women to get access to the health care they need. As president, I will do 4 things. I will codify Roe v. Wade into law, so it's law of the land. I will only appoint judges and justices that believe Roe is law of the land. I will repeal the Hyde Amendment, which makes it impossible for low-income women to get access. And I will make sure that no matter what state you live in, you can have access to reproductive services. I hopefully will do it through Medicare for All, where anyone can buy in at a price they can afford, where it would be 4 or 5% of income matched by your employer. It will create competition overnight with the for-profit insurers. And the for-profit insurers, they are trying to have shareholder value. They have to have quarterly profits. They pay their CEOs millions of dollars. Where do you think that money all goes? Not for your health care. When they deny you a day in the hospital, it's because they want to make more money. When they say you can't have the medicine your doctor wants, it's because they want to make more money. They are complicit. They are harming us. So I want to compete with them with the not-for-profit option of Medicare. Let them go for maybe 4 or 5 years. If you get a buy-in of 60, 70, 80%, your step to make it an earned benefit just like Social Security is so short, and that is how we get to health care as a right, universal, affordable, and permanent. Thank you.
My third pregnancy kind of turned into a tragedy. I was pregnant with twins, and they were diagnosed with twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, and I had to terminate one in order to save the other. And I was transferred to the Cincinnati Fetal Care Center, and my survivor is now 12 years old and healthy. But in Ohio, the Cincinnati Fetal Care Center can no longer perform that treatment option because of their abortion restrictions have become so extreme. But I went to Kavanaugh protest and was arrested 3 times to help get Kavanaugh on, thank you.
Well done. Thank you for being heard.
Thank you. On the Supreme Court. And so now I'm terrified that we have Gorsuch and now Kavanaugh, and it's because of groups like the Federalist Society.
1 minute left.
Yeah, so I'm just asking, what would you do as president to protect the courts to make sure that they are not taken over by extreme right-wingers?
So the question is, what are you going to do to protect the Supreme Court? Because now we've got Gorsuch, now we got Kavanaugh, they're entirely anti-choice, as well as anti-LGBT and a whole lot of other things that we're not going to be able to rely on. So as president, I will look at a couple reforms. I will look, first of all, we need ethics reform for the Supreme Court. Do you know they can be wined and dined by lobbyists? They can be wined and dined by special interests, taken on junkets. They could be bought and paid for. That is not okay. So 100% ethics reform. I will will look at whether term limits can make a difference in depoliticizing the court. I would also look as to whether or not we should change the number of justices to depoliticize the court. So I will look at all of that. But we mentioned this a little early. We really got to get money out of politics. And I'm telling you, I'm the only presidential candidate who's focused on how we get rid of the rot and the corruption in Washington. Because you need to know your democracy is being subverted by people and institutions that have so much money. The Koch brothers can spend millions every election cycle. The dark money is throughout politics. When you have the NRA spending so much money on campaigns, we need to know that our Parkland kids and our kids in our schools have a louder voice than the Koch brothers and then the NRA. And the only way to do that is publicly funded elections. So I just want to thank you all for coming. This has been a privilege. This has been an honor. I'm out. I'm not allowed to go over. I've been said 0 minutes, but I will be walking around the fair all day. I just want to thank you for coming out today. Iowa is an incredible place. The fact that you care so deeply about this democracy, the fact that you are willing to come and listen to every candidate tell you about themselves, I'm very grateful, and I think this is a real blessing for all of us. God bless you all, and thank you.
Well, if you want some of that, go ahead. Did you already put some on?
I mean, this is mainly water bottle from yesterday.
Oh, okay.
If you liked what you heard, KirstenGillibrand.com. It's really important so I can make the next debate stage. $1.
That magazine.
When did you get here?
About an hour ago. How about you? You been here since 5?
Yeah, I mean, I flew in, whatever.
What her staffer is calling the biggest stuffed animal he could find. The fun directing is going very well at the State Fair. This is what the Twitter from Laura Henderson, and you saw the stuffed animal that she made mention of when Senator Gillibrand was on the stage. These are live view pictures, breaking up just a little bit, but we'll listen in as she talks to fairgoers and with reporters.
I will try. We're going to have to go right now. Can you tell somebody where to go?
Yep.
Sign your book? Yeah.
Thank you so much for your
How are you? I like your hat. It's great.
Right down the street and to the right.
I got one. Thank you.
Come on, follow me. Follow them.
I'm going.
And the first person.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thanks, sir. Right on in. Hi. Whoa. Whoa, it's really Okay, so the first question we have for governors that we have here in Iowa, someone who actually understands that children should not be going back to school with fear of gun violence in their classroom. Children should not have the anxiety they have today, that they have to do shelter-in-place drills as opposed to math drills. It's absurd. And so we need a governor and we need presidents who actually understand that the NRA does not represent us. In fact, they represent gun manufacturers, and they care more about gun sales than they care about people and children. So we need leadership, and President Trump's unwilling to provide it. Mitch McConnell will not even call us back into session to pass the common sense bills that have already passed the House, and it's a lack of leadership. Senator.
Do you have any thoughts about the EPA granting 31 more small refinery ethanol waivers?
It's ridiculous. This EPA under President Trump keeps granting waivers for huge oil companies. It's supposed to be for small refineries. They're actually giving it to big companies like ExxonMobil. And it's not right, and it's really hurting the ethanol producers. And we know here in Iowa that biofuels is the future. And we have some of the smartest engineers and scientists figuring out how to move this country into a green, renewable future, and biofuels are going to be very much part of that.
Senator, do you feel the filibuster in the Senate retards progress overall?
Right now, it does because of Mitch McConnell. If we were to eliminate the filibuster, though, under Mitch McConnell, I don't think we would be able to protect women's reproductive freedom or LGBTQ equality or clean air and clean water standards. I think there'd be a lot of things that we take for granted that would actually be unwound with a 51 vote threshold under Leader McConnell. So I have concerns, but I fully understand there are big issues out there that we might want to be able to actually move forward on. So I will look at it if I'm president.
Senator, do you believe that Walmart should stop selling firearms?
Yes.
And how long? Do you think that should be temporary or permanent?
I think it's really important that we make particularly assault weapons and large magazines inaccessible to civilian use. I think one of the problems we've seen in all these mass shootings is the easy access that these individuals have had to the most sophisticated weapons that our warfighters spend months training to use before they use them. I don't think those kinds of weapons should be readily available.
Senator Gillibrand, AR-15s aren't used in the U.S. military, never have been and by the U.S. in war, so is there a difference between the types of guns in your mind that you would want to ban for civilian use, or is that...
I would ban military-style weapons that are designed specifically to kill large numbers of people very quickly. When you have a magazine that can allow for dozens of rounds, that's intended for as a weapon of war. And let's be clear about what we have right now. We have people in this country fueled by hate and anger, misogyny, racism, and fear, hunting down other Americans, other people across this country with weapons of war. That's actually what's happening right now. So I think we have to have a serious conversation about what kind of common sense gun reforms make sense. We can end gun violence in this country with universal background checks, with banning the large magazines and the assault rifles, as well as having a federal anti-gun trafficking law. Those three common sense reforms are ones most Americans already agree on, even NRA members. The only people who don't agree with that are the gun manufacturers who want to sell guns at all costs.
We got time for one more. Last question.
Any comment on Epstein? Any comment on Epstein?
I just think we need to look into it, because someone who's on a suicide watch list, to be taken off that, I don't know why that decision would have been made. I would have preferred him to actually face justice and our criminal justice system for the horrible crimes that are alleged against him: pedophilia, human trafficking, trafficking minors, and sexual assault.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay.
Do we have
Thank you,
more?
guys.
Do you want to do more?
It's okay. I listen to Alex. Smart lady.
Let's move out of the
Thanks, guys.
Trafficking minors, and sexual assault.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay. Do we have any more? It's okay. I listen to Alex.
Out of the...
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, of course.
Enjoy the fair.
Thank you.
So glad you were able to make it.
Thank you.
Where are we going?
Thank you. What is your sign? Yeah, you have to be nice.
I think
Oh, I love it. Road to End Alzheimer's. I love it.
My mom passed away this year. She was
Oh, I'm sorry. That's so sad.
She was fighting it for 12 years.
Oh, God bless her. She was a fighter.
She was a fighter.
To help with that? Yeah, so we need to cure Alzheimer's, and I want to cure it certainly within my presidency, and I will fund the NIH to actually do translational research so we can cure Alzheimer's, cure cancer, really take disease head on. Good. Thank you so much. And I would also do another thing. I'd make sure we have more home health aides, so that those individuals who want to age in place, who want to stay in their homes with their families, have the resources and support they need to do that.
That's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Senator, quick photo here.
Thank you for taking my
picture. Here,
Yeah,
right
thank
here.
you. She was right here.
Thank you. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry
Thank
we
you
do
for
have
your
to go.
I met you.
Senator Gillibrand, do you have anything to say to the 60 million people who have student loans or are co-signed on them?
Yes. We should allow everyone to refinance their loans at the lowest rate, 4% right now. We should be able to vitiate loans in bankruptcy, and we should have debt-free college through National Public Service.
Well, you had me at number 2.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just going out to about 100,000 people.
Great.
Can I get a quick selfie?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Kirsten Gillibrand.
Good luck.
Senator, can I get a photo?
This thing, I can't afford to fix it right now. I'm gonna wait for a second.
Can I go to on the government teacher?
Oh God, this was a mistake.
Good luck. Thank you for showing up.
Laura?
Pen, stay with me.
I know.
Stay with Blueberry. I'll be sure Blueberry.
So sorry, pardon me.
Blueberry's a slow.
Thank you. How are you? Good. Where are we going? We're going to
Blueberry. Everyone.
Sorry, we're just. Thank you. That's what I talked about. Oh, that's so funny. Oh, yeah. Remember? Yeah. Nice to see you again.
Thank you for your comments on climate.
You're welcome.
We don't hear enough of it, but you are really.
I put it in my
putting
sub speech right
I
in
know
there
you did what
as
we
the
asked.
first impossible thing that I would get done.
Thank you so
Just
much.
because you asked.
Yeah, I appreciate
You
that.
guys are great advocates. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Thank you.
Senator, I'd love to hear your thoughts about curing Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah, I would task the NIH to do translational research in Alzheimer's to find a cure within my administration. And I would fund the research. I would also fund home health aides to make sure that people who do want to age in place, age at home, have caregivers. Third, I would make sure if you are a full-time caregiver that you are also eligible for Social Security disability so you can get a living wage. And so you can actually provide for your loved one as opposed to having to put someone in an institution because that's the only way to get it paid for.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out.
Yeah, indeed.
Senator, USFA, I was just wondering, a lot of Iowans here have been talking about worries about this kind of leftward push in the party. How do you kind of get Iowans on your side?
I think it's a false choice. I think you actually need, it's not about having one person who's so progressive that inspires space or another person who's moderate enough to win back those Obama Trump voters. I think you actually need somebody who can do both. And that's why I decided to run for president, because I know I can. I can be for the big ideas and achieve really hard things, like ending climate change and passing the Green New Deal and healthcare is a right. But I also know how to bring together people in red and purple areas to share the vision and to get things done. And so I'm less worried about that concern than the reality that we need someone who actually can do both things.
Easier said than done, right? We're actually running to a live pit. You're totally welcome to walk with us, and you can talk to us the whole time. I just want to make sure she can walk a little faster.
Yeah, go. A lot of Iowans specifically mention those members of Congress that the president attacked. Is that a worry that his attacks are working? Socialists.
No, it's not that his attacks are working. It's that he's demonizing people.
Excuse us, sorry,
should not be demonized based on the color of their skin or where they're from. I mean, this country is a country that immigrants really played a major role in building. That immigration and demonize immigrants and refugees when we used to care for refugees and welcome them into our communities. And so he's changing the character of the country, which is what's most disturbing.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Of course.
Where are you living?
I'm Alex. Can I come up with a We're taking a right here?
I just wanted to know whether or not
We're taking it right here. We're going to a CNN live pit.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to know whether or not you do think, though,
This
that the
way.
president has
No, we're going this way. We're going this way. We're going this way. Yeah, I know.
whether or not presidential candidates or the president should be telling private businesses what to do. That's where the debate is going to be.
That's wrong behind you.
So it doesn't have to necessarily be all of us.
Okay. I got it. Thank you. For now.
Record breakers, hold on.
Thanks for the second debate. It was awesome.
Thank you. It was so much fun.
Keep it up, fellow mom.
I will. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for your strong statements on climate.
Oh, you're welcome.
You know, our biggest problem